Beauty and Grey, a wise leader. Lakkhana Jathaka. When the Buddha was living in the bamboo grove monastery near Rajagaha, he related this story with regard to Devadatta. Devadatta had created a schism among the monks by taking away 500 monks from the Buddha to dwell at Gaya. When the Buddha, through his divine eye, saw that these monks were ready to attain emancipation, arhatship, he asked the Venerable Moggallana and Sariputta to go to preach to them and satisfy them by their preaching, to bring them back. Going to Gaya, they brought all 500 monks back to the bamboo grove monastery. One evening, the other monks were talking about this incident in the preaching hall. When the Buddha came, they told him about what they had been talking. The Buddha said, "Not only today, but even in the past, Sariputta has gained glory by bringing back his kinsfolk, while Devadatta has lost his following." The assembled monks then invited the Buddha to tell the old story. And the Buddha related it in this way. Once upon a time, there was a deer who was the leader of a herd of 1,000. He had 2 sons. One was very slim and tall, with bright colored eyes and smooth reddish fur. He was called Beauty, Lakkhana. The other was grey in color, also slim and tall, and was called Grey, Kala. One day, after they were fully grown, their father called Beauty and Grey to them. He said, "I am now very old, so I can't do all that is necessary to look after this big herd of deer. I want you, my 2 grown-up children, to be the leaders. While I retire from looking after them all the time, we will divide the herd and each of you will lead 500 deer." So it was done. In India, when the harvest time comes, the deer are always in danger. The rice is at its tallest, and the deer cannot help but go into the paddies and eat it. To avoid the destruction of their crops, the human beings dig pits, set sharp stakes in the ground, and build traps, all to capture and kill the deer. Knowing this was the season, the wise old deer called the 2 new leaders to him. He advised them to take the herds up into the mountain forest, far from the dangerous farmlands. This was how he had always saved the deer from being wounded or killed. Then he would bring them back to the lowlands after the harvest was over. Since he was too old and weak for the trip, he would remain behind in hiding. He warned them to be careful and have a safe journey. Beauty set out with his herd for the mountain forest, and so did Grey with his. The villagers all along the way knew that this was the time the deer moved from the low-lying farmlands to the high countryside. So they hid along the way and killed the deer as they passed by. Grey did not pay attention to his father's wise advice. Instead of being careful and traveling safely, he was in a hurry to get to the lush mountain forest. So he moved his herd constantly during the night at dawn and dusk, and even in broad daylight. This made it easy for the people to shoot the deer in Gray's herd with bows and arrows. Many were killed, and many were wounded, only to die in pain later on. Gray reached the forest with only a few deer remaining alive. The tall, sleek, red-furred beauty was wise enough to understand the danger to his moving herd. So he was very careful. He knew it was safer to stay away from the villagers and from all humans. He knew it was not safe in the daytime or even at dawn or dusk. So he led his herd wide around the villages and moved only in the middle of the night. Beauty's herd arrived in the mountain forest safe and sound, with no one killed or injured. The two herds found each other and remained in the mountains until well after the harvest season was over. Then they began the return to the farmland country. Gray had learned nothing from the first trip. As it was getting cold in the mountains, he was in a hurry to get to the warmer lowlands. So he was just as careless as before. Again, the people hid along the way and attacked and killed the deer. All Gray's herd were whipped, later to be eaten or sold by villagers. Gray himself was the only one who survived the journey. Beauty led his herd in the same careful way as before. He brought back all 500 deer completely safe. While the deer were still in the distance, the old chief said to his doe, "Look at the deer coming back to us. Beauty has all his followers with him. Gray comes limping back alone, without his whole herd of 500. Those who follow a wise leader with good qualities will always be safe. Those who follow a foolish leader who is careless and think only of himself will fall into troubles and be destroyed." After some time, the old deer died and was reborn as he deserved. Beauty became chief of the herd and lived a long life, loved and admired by all. The Buddha then related the birds in this way. In past, when they were born as deer, Gray was Devadatta and Beauty was the elder Sariputta. Beauty's followers are today the Buddha's followers. The mother doe was the mother of Rahula. The father deer was I who am today the Buddha. The moral: a wise leader puts the safety of his followers first.